Modern fortification lines aren't supposed to be breached on foot, not in 2026. Not when every square meter of the front is watched by drones flying 24 hours a day. Not when thermal cameras can pick up a human body at 2 kilometers. Not when the minefields behind the obstacles are laid with GPS precision and covered by pre-registered artillery. And yet, January 27th, 2026, Zaporizhzhia Axis. 12 men walked into the most fortified section of the Russian defensive line and cut it open with their hands. This is the story of a breach that wasn't supposed to be possible. I'm your host at Navy Battlefront, where we break down the most critical military operations shaping global power. Today, we're reconstructing a ground operation, one that rewrote the tactical playbook on how modern fortifications can be defeated. Not with massive bombardment, not with specialized mine-clearing vehicles. With timing, darkness, and combat engineers who had rehearsed this mission 41 times before they executed it for real. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand what those engineers were walking into. The Russian defensive line along the Zaporizhzhia axis had been under construction since mid-2023. By January 2026, it had evolved into something Western military analysts were calling the most sophisticated static defense network since the Korean War. 3 distinct layers, each one designed to stop a different type of attack. The first layer was the Dragon's Teeth. Reinforced concrete pyramids, each weighing between 800 kilograms and 1.2 tons, arranged in staggered rows, 3 deep. The spacing was calculated, too narrow for any armored vehicle wider than 1.6 meters to pass through. Behind the teeth sat a second obstacle belt. Anti-tank ditches, 4 meters wide and 2 meters deep, with the forward lip reinforced by steel I-beams driven into the frozen ground. Behind the ditches came the minefields, TM62 anti-tank mines laid in a mixed pattern with PMN4 anti-personnel mines. According to intelligence assessments compiled from drone surveillance and signals intercepts, the mine density in this sector exceeded 600 devices per kilometer. Every 20 meters, a different fuse type. Pressure, magnetic influence, tilt rod. The Russians had made the minefield almost impossible to clear with a single technique. And behind all of that, the fire positions. Reinforced concrete bunkers spaced every 300 meters along the line, each housing a heavy machine gun or automatic grenade launcher with overlapping fields of fire. Behind the bunkers, mortar teams with pre-registered coordinates covering every gap in the obstacle belt. Behind the mortars, self-propelled artillery batteries that could drop rounds on any point along the line within 90 seconds of a fire request. This was not a defensive line. This was a killing system. Every component was designed to channel attacking forces into zones where the next component would destroy them. Ukrainian forces had tried twice before. In November 2025, an armored thrust by elements of the 65th Mechanized Brigade attempted to punch through a section 12 kilometers south of the eventual breach point. They used mine-clearing line charges, MICLIC equivalents, fired from armored vehicles. The charges detonated. They cleared lanes through the minefield. But the moment the vehicles moved into the lanes, Russian drone operators spotted them. FPV kamikaze drones swarmed the lead vehicles within 4 minutes. 2 Leopard 2A4s were disabled. A third took a Lancet strike to the engine compartment. The attack stalled, and Ukrainian forces withdrew under smoke cover, having lost 5 vehicles and 11 wounded. The second attempt came in early December, a dismounted infantry assault under darkness. The soldiers reached the Dragon's Teeth but couldn't breach them without heavy equipment. They pulled back before dawn. 0 casualties, but 0 progress. The 47th Mechanized Brigade's operations staff studied both failures. The pattern was clear. Daytime approaches were suicide. Drone surveillance made surprise impossible. Armored approaches at night were detectable by thermal imaging and ground sensors. Dismounted approaches could achieve surprise, but dismounted soldiers couldn't breach the concrete obstacles. The problem seemed unsolvable. Colonel Yuri Fedorenko, commanding the 47th Engineer Battalion, proposed an answer that his own staff initially dismissed. Put combat engineers on foot, in the dark, carrying enough demolition equipment to cut through the dragon's teeth manually, and give them enough electronic warfare cover to stay invisible while they worked. The plan was designated Operation Cold Chisel. Planning took 6 weeks. Every phase was rehearsed on a replica obstacle course built 30 kilometers behind the front, using captured Russian dragon's teeth, transported from a previously overrun section of the line. The 12 engineers selected for the mission practiced at night, in full kit, wearing the same thermal masking suits they would use on the real operation. Each rehearsal was timed. Each was observed by drone operators who tried to detect the team, using the same equipment the Russians used. By mid-January, the team could breach a 3-tooth-wide channel in 17 minutes. They could clear a 50-meter minefield lane in 22 minutes, using portable mine rollers dragged by 2-man teams. Total time from step-off to a passable armored vehicle lane: 90 minutes under ideal conditions, 120 under combat stress. The intelligence preparation was equally meticulous. For 3 weeks before the operation, Ukrainian surveillance drones mapped every Russian position along the target sector. Signals intelligence units monitored Russian radio frequencies, building a pattern-of-life database that tracked when sentries changed, when drone operators rotated shifts, and when artillery batteries conducted maintenance checks. The data revealed a vulnerability. Between 0200 and 0330, Russian drone coverage in the target sector dropped to a single Orlan 10 surveillance drone, flying a predictable figure-8 pattern with a cycle time of 14 minutes. The drone's thermal camera had a known blind spot when it banked into the northern leg of its pattern, approximately 45 seconds, where a 200-meter section of the obstacle line was unobserved. That window was not enough to complete the breach, but it was enough to begin it undetected. The electronic warfare component was critical. Ukrainian EW units from the 15th Radio Electronic Warfare Regiment positioned 3 vehicle-mounted jamming systems, Bukovel AD complexes, within range of the target sector. Their mission was not to jam everything. Broad-spectrum jamming would alert Russian signals intelligence that something was happening. Instead, the jammers were programmed to target specific frequencies, the command links used by Orlan 10 drones, and the data feeds from ground-mounted surveillance sensors. The timing had to be perfect. Activate too early, and the Russians would investigate the interference before the engineers reached the line. Activate too late, and the Orlan would spot the team during approach. January 27th. Temperature, -11 Celsius. Wind from the northeast at 15 knots. Cloud cover, total. No moon. Visibility without night vision, less than 20 meters. The weather window the meteorological team had been waiting for. At 0145, the diversionary phase began. Ukrainian artillery, a battery of 6.2 S-1 Gvozdika self-propelled howitzers, opened fire on Russian positions 3 kilometers south of the breach point. The barrage was designed to look like preparation for an assault. Mixed high explosive and smoke rounds. Sustained fire, not a quick salvo. The kind of bombardment that forces Russian counter-battery radar to orient toward the firing positions, pulling electronic attention away from the actual breach sector. At 0153, Russian counter-battery radar activated. The radar beams swept south, searching for the Ukrainian gun positions, exactly as planned. At 0158, the 12 engineers crossed the line of departure. They moved in 3 4-man teams, spaced 50 meters apart, following a route that had been cleared of mines by a Pathfinder team 2 nights earlier. Each man carried between 30 and 40 kilograms of equipment, shaped charges, portable hydraulic breaching tools, mine detection probes, infrared marking beacons, no radios, no electronic devices that could be detected. Communication was by hand, signal only. The thermal masking suits were a Ukrainian adaptation. standard infantry cold weather gear modified with an outer layer of metallized fabric that reduced infrared signature by approximately 60%. Not invisible. But in -11 temperatures, with wind chill dropping effective temperature below -20, the reduced signature blended with the thermal noise of the frozen ground. At 0207, the Bukovel AD systems activated. The Orlan 10, flying over the sector, experienced what its operator later described in intercepted communications as sudden interference. The video feed pixelated. The drone's autopilot held course, but the operator could no longer confirm what was on the ground below. Standard Russian procedure called for the operator to attempt signal recovery for 3 minutes before reporting the malfunction. Those 3 minutes were the opening. Team 1 reached the first row of Dragon's Teeth at 0211. The concrete pyramids were frosted over, slick with ice. Each tooth was approximately 1 meter tall and 1.2 meters wide at the base. Destroying them with explosives would create noise that could alert nearby positions even with the diversionary barrage running. The engineers used a combination approach. Shaped charges, small, directional, were placed at the base of selected teeth to fracture the concrete. Then hydraulic spreaders, powered by hand pumps, widened the cracks until sections could be levered aside. It was brutal physical work in freezing conditions. The men's hands cramped inside their gloves. The hydraulic fluid thickened in the cold, requiring more pump strokes per expansion. The first channel through the Dragon's Teeth was passable at 0229. 18 minutes, 1 minute over the rehearsal average. Team 2 had already moved past Team 1 and was probing the minefield. Using lightweight fiberglass mine probes, virtually undetectable by metal detectors, they located and marked the first row of TM62 mines. The mines were buried under approximately 15 centimeters of frozen earth. Digging them out with hand tools in the frozen ground was impossible within the time window. Instead, the team used the portable mine rollers, weighted cylinders dragged on cables, to detonate the pressure-fused mines in sequence. Each detonation was a risk. The sound could carry. But the diversionary artillery barrage was still running, and the wind was carrying sound away from the nearest Russian position. The first mine detonated at 0234, then a second, a third. Each blast opened another section of the lane. At 0241, a problem. Team 3, tasked with clearing the anti-tank ditch crossing, discovered that the ditch in their sector was deeper than intelligence had indicated. The drone imagery had measured it at 2 meters. The actual depth was closer to 2.8 meters. The portable bridging equipment they carried, aluminum fascines designed to be dropped into the ditch to create a ramp, was insufficient for the extra depth. Sergeant Major Oleksandr Koval made a field decision. His team stripped the thermal masking panels from their suits and layered them with fascines at the bottom of the ditch to build up the foundation. It added 9 minutes to the timeline. 9 minutes they didn't have. At 0247, the Orlan 10's operator regained partial signal. The drone's camera showed the sector in grainy, intermittent imagery. The operator noticed what he initially classified as thermal anomalies near the obstacle line. He flagged it in his report. But the anomalies were inconsistent. The thermal masking suits, the frozen ground, and the wind created a pattern that the operator assessed as sensor artifacts from the jamming interference. He did not escalate the report. This was the human error that made the breach possible. At 0309, the minefield lane was clear. 400 meters of passable ground, marked with infrared beacons that pulsed at a frequency visible only through Ukrainian standard night vision equipment. 12 mines had been detonated in sequence. 6 more had been manually disarmed and moved to the sides of the lane. At 0317, the anti-tank ditch crossing was passable. Koval's improvised solution held, barely. The crossing could support vehicles up to 35 tons. Bradley fighting vehicles weighed approximately 33 tons combat-loaded. The margin was uncomfortably thin. At 0324, Team 1 completed the second channel through the Dragon's Teeth, a wider gap that allowed 2 vehicles to pass in sequence without stopping. The engineers placed the final infrared beacons and began their withdrawal to the Ukrainian side of the line. Total time from first contact with the obstacle line to completed breach, 1 hour and 13 minutes, under the rehearsed combat stress estimate, under the operational maximum. But the operation was only half over. A breach is worthless if nothing comes through it. At 0340, the first Ukrainian Bradley fighting vehicle entered the lane. Call sign, Hammer 1. The vehicle moved at walking pace, guided by an engineer walking ahead with an infrared pointer marking the edges of the cleared path. 1 deviation of 2 meters in either direction meant an active minefield. Hammer 2 followed at a 50-meter interval, then Hammer 3. 4 vehicles in the first wave, each carrying a squad of infantry from the 47th's 2nd Mechanized Battalion. At 0347, Hammer 1 cleared the final obstacle line and pushed into open ground beyond the Russian fortifications. The terrain here was flat agricultural land, frozen hard, with scattered tree lines providing partial concealment. The Bradley's thermal sights scanned for threats. Nothing. The Russian positions nearest the breach were oriented south, toward the diversionary barrage, which was still firing intermittently to maintain the deception. At 0358, the first Russian response came, but not at the breach. A Russian mortar battery dropped 12 rounds on the diversionary sector, responding to the artillery barrage that had been running for over 2 hours. The breach sector remained quiet. At 0406, 6 Bradleys were through the lane. Infantry dismounted and began establishing firing positions along a tree line 800 meters beyond the fortification line. The perimeter expanded east and west, securing the breach from potential flanking counterattacks. At 0419, sunrise was 71 minutes away. The window of darkness was closing. Ukrainian commanders accelerated the flow. 2 more Bradleys pushed through, followed by a logistics vehicle carrying additional ammunition and anti-tank missiles. At 0431, the breach was detected. A Russian ground surveillance radar, a PSNR-8 battlefield surveillance system positioned 4 kilometers northeast of the breach, registered multiple moving targets in an area that should have been behind intact fortifications. The radar operator checked his system twice. The contacts were real, moving south to north, at least 6 vehicles. The alert went to the Russian battalion command post at 0434. The battalion commander, initially skeptical, nothing on his sector had moved in weeks, requested drone confirmation. But the Orlan 10 that had been covering the sector was still experiencing intermittent signal issues. A replacement drone was launched from a rear position, but it wouldn't arrive over the breach for another 22 minutes. Those 22 minutes determined the outcome. At 0436, Russian artillery received a fire mission on the suspected breach area, but the coordinates were based on the radar contacts, not visual confirmation. The first salvo of 6 152mm rounds landed 300 meters east of the actual breach lane. Close enough to shake the ground, not close enough to hit anything. Ukrainian electronic warfare units detected the Russian fire mission transmission and shifted 1 Bukovel AD system to jam the correction frequency. The second Russian salvo was delayed by 4 minutes as the artillery battery switched to backup communications. At 0444, the Ukrainian perimeter beyond the breach extended to 1.2 kilometers. 10 armored vehicles were now through. Infantry had occupied 3 separate positions, creating a triangular defensive perimeter. At 0451, the Russian replacement drone arrived over the sector. Its camera revealed the full extent of the breach. The imagery went directly to Russian regimental command. The reaction was immediate, but the response options were limited. The nearest Russian mechanized reserve was an understrength company of T-72 B-3 tanks, positioned 8 kilometers behind the line. Moving them forward along frozen roads in the dark would take at least 40 minutes. Russian artillery shifted fire. The third salvo was corrected. Rounds landed within 150 meters of the breach lane. Shrapnel peppered 2 Bradleys, but penetrated neither. The fourth salvo walked closer. A round detonated 60 meters from the lane, cratering the frozen ground and throwing debris across the cleared path. At 0503, a Ukrainian Bradley took a near miss that damaged its left track. The vehicle slewed sideways, partially blocking the lane. Engineers rushed forward to guide subsequent vehicles around the obstruction. The flow slowed, but didn't stop. At 0512, Ukrainian counter-battery fire engaged the Russian artillery positions. M142 HIMARS launchers, pre-positioned for exactly this contingency, fired GMLRS rockets at the Russian gun line. Satellite-guided munitions struck 2 of the 4 Russian howitzers that had been firing on the breach. The incoming fire dropped by half. By 0530, dawn light was beginning to define the horizon. 18 Ukrainian armored vehicles had passed through the breach. Infantry had pushed the perimeter to 1.8 kilometers beyond the fortification line. The 47th's forward command post was operational behind the tree line, coordinating the expansion of the foothold. The Russian counterattack came at 0547. 4 T-72, B-3 tanks, and 2 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles advancing from the northeast. Ukrainian infantry engaged with Javelin anti-tank missiles at 2,100 meters. The first Javelin struck the lead T-72 in top attack mode, detonating the ammunition carousel. The tank erupted. The second T-72 reversed into a ditch, trying to find cover. The remaining Russian vehicles pulled back after losing a BMP-3 to a second Javelin strike. The counterattack lasted 11 minutes. By 0630, the breach was secure. Ukrainian forces held a salient 1.8 kilometers deep and 2.4 kilometers wide beyond the Russian fortification line. The Dragon's Teeth, the minefields, the fire positions, all of it bypassed through a single 400-meter lane cut by 12 men with hand tools. Comment breach. If you think the 47th's engineers made the right call going in on foot, the cost was remarkably low for what was achieved. 3 Ukrainian soldiers wounded by artillery shrapnel during the exploitation phase. 1 Bradley with track damage, later repaired. No fatalities among the engineering team. But the operation left consequences that extended far beyond one breach in one sector. Within 72 hours, Russian forces along the entire Zaporizhzhia axis began repositioning. Reserve units moved closer to the fortification line, reducing reaction times, but also making them more vulnerable to Ukrainian deep strikes. Drone patrol frequencies doubled in adjacent sectors, straining already limited Russian UAV inventories. At the strategic level, the breach forced a reassessment. Russian military bloggers, often more candid than official sources, described it as a demonstration that static fortifications could be defeated by creative tactical solutions rather than overwhelming firepower. The Dragon's Teeth, which had consumed enormous resources to construct, had been bypassed in 73 minutes by a team that cost less to equip than a single artillery round from a 2S-19 Mesta. Western military observers drew different conclusions. A NATO assessment circulated in February 2026 noted that the operation's success depended on conditions that couldn't be reliably replicated. Extended winter darkness, favorable weather, a specific gap in Russian drone coverage, and a human error by a single drone operator who failed to escalate an anomaly report. Remove any one factor, and the breach likely fails. The 12 engineers received decorations. Sergeant Major Koval was awarded the Order of Bohdan Khmelnytsky for his field decision at the anti-tank ditch. Colonel Fedorenko received a promotion. The 47th Mechanized Brigade was cited for operational innovation. Subscribe if you want to see how modern combat engineering is rewriting the rules of fortification warfare. The breach at Zaporizhzhia proved something that military theorists have argued for decades. No defensive line is stronger than the weakest moment in its surveillance coverage. The Dragon's teeth were engineering marvels. The minefields were laid with precision. The fire positions were expertly sighted. But none of it mattered when 12 soldiers found the gap in the electronic eyes watching over them. The Russians have adapted. New surveillance protocols, redundant drone coverage, automated sensor networks that don't rely on a single operator's judgment. The gap that existed on January 27th no longer exists, which raises the question no one in Kiev or Moscow will answer publicly. The 47th found one gap, one night, one breach. How many others are being planned right now, for gaps that haven't been closed yet? The fortification line still stands, but after January 27th, everyone on both sides knows the truth. Concrete stops vehicles. It doesn't stop 12 men who know exactly where you're not looking.